Trying to see if y'all can see my screen. Can y'all see the taking action slideshow now?
Yes.
Okay.
This
Okay,
is
awesome.
my Kindle. And this is my dog. Her name's Bella.
Awesome. Hey, Dakota, I'm going to be teaching this now. I need you to hop out. All right. So what does it mean to be a community leader? Let's start with some other kids' thoughts on what it means to be a leader.
When preparing a proper meal.
Good old ads. Can y'all see the video?
We're on a mission to make the world more awesome for kids. We want to talk to kids and see how they want to make the world more awesome. So we went to the California Association of Student Youth. I can't even say it. Okay, I'm gonna say it slower. The California Association of Student Leaders. Yeah, it's as awesome as it sounds. We talked to really smart kids and teens. Here's what they said.
I feel like kids have a lot to bring to the table when it comes to change.
The world would be more awesome if people try to understand each person's point of view.
If kids and adults could work together.
If there was less judgment and prejudice in this world, and that everyone accepted each other for who they really are and not for who they view them to be.
If I was elected president, I think I would try to just stop the negativity around the world.
If I was president, I would fix immigration because here in the US, we stand for freedom and liberty. So why not welcome everyone from around the world with open arms?
I would find a way to make people more accepting towards one another.
I would give kids more of a voice. I feel like kids need to be more empowered. They need to know that the world is going to be in their hands someday, and they definitely need to be taking initiative.
I would fix the wage gap between men and women. If I could give the world one message, it would just be, do you. You are perfectly fine however you are.
You should always be yourself because there's too many of everybody else.
Treat people nicely because you don't know what people are going through. You don't know what their story is, and everybody has different opinions. And if you just respect that person, then they'll respect you.
To be a leader, it means to make a difference in the lives of others and really empower them to see the best that they can be.
Someone who takes others' opinions and doesn't just go my way or the highway. They're open-minded and they're passionate about what they do.
A good leader is responsible, they're honest, they have a good attitude.
The main thing is just be positive to everyone. You don't want to ever bring anyone down.
You have to also be the one to listen.
To be open-minded and to be arms wide open for everyone.
I believe that everyone has the potential to be amazing, and I really want to maximize that and try to make everyone as great as they can be.
I don't that much.
I don't even know what to do. Okay, let's get into it. I should walk.
You guys are the best. What do you think will make the world more awesome for kids? Come on, it's time. I believe in you people. Let's do this. KP out.
There we go. All right, so kind of tying into what a lot of y'all said, inspiring other people. I love Kid President too. And inspiring other people, being different, not being afraid to stand out and say something and do something. All right, let me go back to the presentation. Here we go. Maybe. Sometimes I'm just not as technically advanced as I think I am. Yeah. Okay. So now thinking about what it means to be a leader, inspiring other people, what other things do you think leadership requires? What kinds of skill sets do you think that being a leader would require of you?
Like I said, wants to be trustworthy.
So being trustworthy, motivating other people. Here is kind of a general breakdown. There are 3 C's of leadership, and you can encompass all of what y'all were saying into each of these. So 3 C's of leadership is communication, listening to people explain and being able to effectively explain your vision and your ideas, explaining your goals to the community, but also being able to listen to the community, listen to the people that you wish to inspire and work with. So communication skills are huge. That goes with being trustworthy, I think, because you're showing that you're willing to listen to what people are saying, and then you reverberate it back. You communicate back to them that you're a trustworthy person. Creativity. So to be a community leader, you need to truly know that community. You need to know what the problems are. You need to understand the community. And then the creativity piece comes into how do you solve those problems? Being creative means not being afraid to try new things, not being afraid to listen and try another idea maybe that hasn't been done before. And lastly, commitment. This commitment piece is crucial, particularly for leaders, because if somebody comes up and says, I'm going to be a leader, I'm going to do this idea, and then in 2 weeks it fizzles off, that breaks away, once again, that trustworthiness of being a leader. And then it doesn't inspire and awe people to get back out there and do the work. So commitment, you got to be in it for the long haul. That means being willing to do what others won't do. So that means waking up at 5 a.m. to pick up cigarette butts off the roads and the sidewalks and out of the parks. That means cleaning up the trash. That means doing a lot of the dirty work. You need to be a leader, you got to lead by example and show your commitment to your community by not being afraid to get your hands dirty. Anybody else think of anything that maybe ties in with these 3 C's that I didn't mention? All right. How to be a community leader. So we think about, so the opening video talked about how to be a leader in terms of broad scope, president, being a national leader, being a kind of a worldwide kind of person. When you think of a leader, what are some names that come to your mind? I think of like Greta Thunberg, right? I think of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Think of, well, of course, Martin Luther King. We think of big national leaders, right? But those are not the only important leaders that matter. Those are not the only people who make a difference. As a matter of fact, the majority of the work that they did started in their communities. So let's look at a video about how to be a community leader.
Soy Angie de Ecuador. Yo les voy a dar unos tips para ser un gran líder. El tip número 1 es conocer las problemáticas que existen en tu parroquia, en tu comunidad, para que así tú puedas cambiar, porque el cambio lo eres tú. Tip número 2. Buscar aliados para que te puedan ayudar en el cambio. Tip número 3. Tienes que conocerte a ti mismo y confiar en ti. Tip número 4. Tienes que ser una persona decidida para el cambio, decidida a romper los estereotipos por los cuales las niñas hemos sido implantadas por toda la sociedad. Tip número 5. Debes tener reuniones consecutivas con las autoridades de tu parroquia, de tu cantón, de tu comunidad y, ¿por qué no?, de tu país. Tip número 6. No siempre vas a recibir una respuesta positiva. Hay veces que las autoridades te van a negar que te escuchen, te van a negar tu petición, pero aún así debe ser muy positivo. Tip número 7. Recuerda que unidas somos más y podemos lograr el cambio. Seremos un gran movimiento en el cual este cambio sea beneficioso para todas las niñas y mujeres. Les agradezco a que hayan visto mi video y les invito a seguir viendo de mis.
All right, so that one was talk about girls as well, but I wanted to really take away those key points that that she had mentioned. Hang on, let me go back to my screen again. Those key points that she had mentioned about knowing yourself and trusting yourself, right? knowing the problems in your community, starting with yourself, know yourself, trust yourself, but more importantly, and diving deeper into that, starting with your why. Why is it important to you? Why you know the problems in your community? Why is it important that you address it? Why does it matter so much to you? Can anybody tell me why that's important? Why is it important to know what drives you to be the leader and make the change in your community? Well, I'll tell you, if I'm doing something, changing a diaper at 2 a.m. in the morning, I need to know why I'm still doing this. Why do I wake up at 2 a.m. to change a diaper? Where's my why? My why is my love for my kids. That's kind of an easy metaphor there, but it's the same with the problems in your community. I feel really passionate about getting homeless people homed and in shelter. So that's a huge problem in a community. And why am I so passionate about it? Then my why can go into some of my family members were homeless and didn't have homes, and I'm really passionate about making sure that everybody has a roof over their heads. And I need to remember why I care so much about that, because when I am getting rejected by community leaders and they're not accepting what I want to say, or nobody is backing and supporting me in my petition to create a homeless shelter, when I'm doing all this dirty work, when I'm in the thick of it, when I'm really having a hard time fighting the good fight, I need to know why I'm still doing this, why it matters to me, because ultimately that's what's going to keep me going even when times are really hard. Creating a vision is another part of being a community leader, because once it's not just about solving the problems by yourself, you have to motivate other people to join you in your mission too. And that's where that communication piece comes in. Remember the 3 C's of being a good leader? One of them is communication. And so you need to be able to communicate your vision and share it in a way that will inspire and motivate others to join your cause. So creating that vision, it can be called an elevator speech. It can be a palm card speech, something where if somebody says, why are you doing this? What is your mission? Then you can recite it off the top of your head. I want to create a homeless shelter because 1,500 people in our community go to sleep on the ground every night. And you can give that elevator speech. You can tell them what your vision is. My vision for Carter County is that no person goes to bed at night without a warm, safe roof over their head. Just creating some kind of vision that inspires everybody to say, wow, I care about that too, and I want to join your cause, which then ties into the next thing that was also mentioned in the video on the 7 tips of being a leader, which is knowing your allies, finding your people. Who else cares about what you're doing? Once again, you cannot do this work alone. And so being able to motivate and recruit other people in that similar mission to join you, that's going to mobilize you. That's going to change you from being one person with a vision to a leader inspiring others to be a part of that vision and making that change with you. So getting other people to join on board. And it's not just about making other people join on board. It's about finding the other people in your community who are already working on that. So that's where another C word, which would be good to know, is collaboration. That's where collaboration comes in. I think in all of this community leader thing, I'll go ahead and say that Miss Jillian is a huge example of a community leader, right? So you think about the work that Jillian does, and then you think about how she collaborates or she works with other nonprofit organizations in the area who share a similar vision, and we work together to solve the problems in our community. So that sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? You kind of see what she's doing, and then you see what y'all are doing even. as a youth coalition, you see all the work that you all do, how you put together an idea and you work together to solve a problem in your community. So finding all the people who have that same drive, pulling them all together to create that team. And so then the what drives you to stick with it, even when times get hard, that goes back into the why. So that's just really reinforcing that and making sure you're sharing that vision with other people as well. And this is something y'all are also familiar with, which is making yourself known to officials. Of course, in a positive way, you want to stay on kind of on the good side. It's okay to have some civil disobedience, but you do want to make sure that you're making allies with the people who are your city council members. You want to make allies with your county commissioners, with your school board, with the principal in your school. You can even start small with your teachers. Making yourself known to other people in the community, particularly people with power, is going to be very beneficial in helping promote the work and change that you want to do in your community. So make sure you're talking to the officials in your community, reaching out to county commissioners, city council, school board, and say, hey, this is a problem I see in my community. Here's why I care about it so much. And here is my vision on what we can do to fix it. Oh, and by the way, I have all these people who also care about this issue, who are willing to help join in making this difference. So being able to make yourself known to officials, that way, when you come into a meeting, they're not just saying, wait, who's this person? Why did you all of a sudden decide to care? They have seen a track record of you caring about your community leading up to you coming to them with any kind of petition or policy suggestion. So that makes sense so far? Is everybody following along okay? Any questions so far? Y'all hanging in there? I know it's a lot. All right. So why start small? You know, we're talking about what it means to be a community leader, but we think about people like the likes of Greta. We think about people in the likes of Martin Luther King. We think about these major national leaders. So why start small? Why are we talking about being a local community leader? Starting small, once again, that's where every major leader has gotten their starting point. And it doesn't mean that being a local community leader has to be only a starting point. As a matter of fact, there's a major payoff to staying in a community and investing in that community for the long haul. The starting small is because you know and you understand the community better than anybody else. I'm just going to keep using Greta because she's well known. Does everybody know Greta Thunberg? Like in my mind, she's well known. Does everybody know who I'm talking about? She's okay. Well, I'm so glad I mentioned that because I don't want to start using an analogy and nobody knows. So Greta is this teenage girl who cares a whole lot about climate change, and she has been doing protests every Friday on climate change for years now. And she started to pick up momentum for her activism work in climate change. She's even spoke to the UK. She's been at the leadership summit, this big leadership summit where all the presidents and major leaders in the world get together, and she's talked about climate change and addressing it with them. So she went from being a small child in her community, just sitting on the corner of her street protesting climate change every Friday, to traveling the world and giving speeches about why we must do something about climate change. No matter where your political stance is on that, the point is to take away from it is she started small, she got big, and here she is now inspiring other people to join her movement. Now she has chapters all over the world being led by other leaders in different countries and communities to make impact. So going back to knowing and understanding your community, if Greta was to come to Carter County and say, y'all need to clean up your pollution and y'all need to do a good job at climate change, are you going to listen to her? Do you think our local officials would listen to her?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's good. I would hope so. But sometimes what happens is people will say, "What do you know about my community? What do you know about the work that we do? We do a lot of things to be green. You don't know what we do. You don't know what we go through. We depend on this factory to supply us with these things." So knowing and understanding the community gives you better insight as somebody who says, I was born and raised here. Here's a problem in my community, and here's how I think we can solve it. You as a local, you as somebody who has lived and has been integrated into that community for a long time, you're going to know the distinct problems and solutions. You're also going to know what your community is going to be open to doing and what it's not going to be open to doing. So if there was this big factory in town, they're probably not open to shutting it down if that's where the majority of the jobs are, right? Like that's where your parents work, that's where that's where your family works. You're not going to want to shut down that factory, even if it means if it talks about climate change. But here's something you would be willing to do. Maybe you'd be willing to ride your bike to school a couple of days a week. Maybe you'd be willing to take walks instead of driving a car everywhere. Recycle more. So you'll know where your community is at much better than somebody coming from the outside in a worldwide or federal level. You're going to know and understand your community and what you can do as a community to work towards a greater vision. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to hop off at 12:50 to start my next class.
12:50. Okay. I think we'll get through much of this before then. So you'll be good. Thank you for letting me know. All right. Local change has immediate impact. This is one of the biggest reasons I am so passionate about being a community leader and working locally. What happens on the federal level, a fun fact here, what happens on the federal level can take about 10 years to have its full impact on a community level. So if there's this big policy change that happens in Washington, D.C. right now, it's going to take about 10 years for it to fully take effect in the community. That's a long time. And in fact, since there isn't an immediate change, people will think, well, the federal government doesn't help anything. It's not doing anything I want it to do. I'm not seeing this new law make any difference to my community, and it might not be yet. But when you work locally and you're working with people who live right next to you, the change that you choose to do and fight for has immediate effect on that community. You start seeing results tomorrow. You start seeing them the day you start working. So that is why local change is so phenomenal and so big. You start small and you see, and going down to the next point, you see that ripple effect. You throw a stone in water, what do you see? It's just this tiny little stone. It plops in, and then you see the waves and the ripples get bigger and bigger and go outward. When you start small, imagine if everybody in every community had a local leader who was making a difference to address homelessness, or was making a difference to make sure that every child in their community was fed. If we start small, it has this huge ripple effect, and every town then has the ability to solve so many problems that could not be solved on a federal level coming down, right? Starting small also reduces the risk of exhaustion. Again, going back to some great nationwide and worldwide leaders, they get exhausted very quickly. It's hard to be the face of something. It's hard to be on the magazine, the Times magazine, and be that one person making that change on such a big level, because then it's almost like too much work to do. It's a great task. We all talk about how we want to change the world and make a difference in the world, and we all should aspire to that. But if we think that we can change the world by ourselves, we are more at risk of burning out and quitting much faster than if we start on a small, manageable level of being a leader, and growing our movement to more leaders, and growing the movement that way. Does that make sense? All right. So bouncing off of that, so many hands make light work. You start the spark and you support more local leaders. That goes back to reducing that risk of exhaustion. So the more people who are working for a common cause, the easier it is to make that change. So you can be that community leader who makes the difference and inspire other people to do that exact same work in their communities as well. Once again, ripple effect. All right. So what about bigger dreams, right? We're talking about starting small, but what about you're like over here saying, I don't want to clean up trash in my community. I want to make a huge difference right now. Being a community leader doesn't mean you have small ideas. It just means you have big ideas and you're working to make them happen right there at home first. So here is my next and final video on this.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct.
Just a while back, when I was preparing for this TED Talk, someone came up to me and she said, Willem, why would your audience spend 15 minutes talking about something that we all know about, namely globalization? Now, although it sounded a little harsh to me, she had a fair point. So firstly, I responded, I said, well, my audience won't really be able to go anywhere. But secondly, and more importantly, I said, well, my talk isn't entirely about globalization. It's more about Glocal citizenship. Now, this is when things started to get really awkward because she just looked at me with this confused look in her eyes, but rather curiously asked me, she said, oh, that's great. So what is Glocal citizenship then? And I responded, I said, aha, so you do want to listen to my talk. Now, I have to be honest with you. When she asked me this question, she placed her finger on an important dilemma that I was facing. Because I have to be honest with you, today I'm speaking from a position of privilege. At the age of 21, I've been able to travel to more than 20 countries, and I've been able to meet accomplished individuals from across the world. So I've been able to benefit from a good education, a good life, a good family. So here I was sitting in my room, scratching my imaginary beard, trying to figure out how I could share my experiences with globalization with everyone. It sort of felt like that moment when you know you're supposed to be doing something interesting, but you end up checking the latest post on NYUD's confession page instead. Anyways, as I'm sitting in my room and I'm trying to figure out how to express this, I realized one thing, namely the importance of Glocal citizenship. So you may ask by now, what is Glocal citizenship, right? Well, Glocal citizenship is about individuals that are acting locally with an emphasis on their global interconnectedness with this world. It focuses on solving problems locally whilst incorporating their importance in global issues. So it involves us all in our local communities, our schools, or the way that we live everywhere around us. And we try and connect it with what's happening globally. Like sometimes these seem invisible global forces, but yet it tries to connect both. So for me, Glocal citizenship has very much been rooted in my education. It always takes me at least 5 minutes to explain my educational trajectory. People ask me, they say, wait, so your dad is from the United States, but you grew up in the Netherlands, but you went to high school in Swaziland. Wait, how did you end up in Abu Dhabi now? It confuses people. It confuses myself even sometimes. And I know it's not unique. A lot of students probably in this audience here today and around the world are facing similar questions. What does it mean to be global? How is this forming our identities? What are the ways in which we look at this? How is it forming our lives? And however, I must say, Glocal citizenship is not about traveling the world. It's not about being able to have a global education. Because let's face it, most of us won't be able to, and a lot of people don't have the opportunity to travel. So I believe that you can be a Glocal citizen even without having a global education, because it's based on 3 main characteristics. It's a way of life, a vision for the future. And firstly, it requires from an individual an awareness of your surroundings, how local they may be. It's about you understanding your position in your community and bringing it back to what's happening around you. Secondly, it requires an active effort to engage and learn from the people who are around you. And thirdly, it requires an understanding that you're a part of something that is larger than yourself. See, each and every one of us here today, and people who are watching and live streaming from homes, all of us have our own individual stories. Every morning we wake up and we face challenges, problems, situations that we have to deal with. And Glocal Citizenship tries to take these problems and create a narrative around them and and connect them globally. And I think what I'm here today and what I'm here to do today is not to talk to you or add to you about globalization. I'm here today to share my story and the way in which globalization has impacted my own identity and the ways in which I came up with this idea of global citizenship through an encounter I had with someone in 2015. See, my world, when I grew up, seemed interconnected and small. I grew up in a world that could enable me as an individual to travel across the world in more than 48 hours. I grew up in a world that seemed beautiful. It was a beautiful place to grow up. But yet today we're seeing that individuals are also struggling. Oh, sorry, that was a preview. So what's happening today? So as we see this increased integration of the world, we're also seeing how this global interconnectedness is suffering. So for my world, I grew up in a world that was beautiful, a world that was optimistic, a world that enabled me to connect with people around. However, I've also seen that this increased integration of the world has created problems on two levels. Firstly, there's an issue that we've seen on a disconnect between what's happening locally and what's happening globally. And now we can see today how badly disconnected they are. Globally, we can say, well, globalization has sort of worked as a stabilizing force. It's enabled us to politically work more together. We can see economically that we're more integrated now than ever before. It's created a market economy, free trade, less protectionism. And socially, we are more connected than ever before. I always like to say that we've come to a time in human civilization in which you can sit at the backseat of your car manufactured in Germany while eating Italian-inspired pizza with a little Belgian waffle on the side while sending a Snapchat to your friends of your dog sticking its head outside of the window. It is truly an amazing time to be alive. And my point is this: never in the history of humanity have we been so exposed to different ideas, cultures, technologies, identities. It is amazing. The world has opened up to us because of globalization. However, this increased integration has also created problems. And I believe that global citizenship can solve them in a way. Because we're seeing here today that people on a local scale are suffering. We're seeing issues with automation. We're seeing Islamophobia on the rise. We're seeing nationalism. People are afraid. They're asking themselves, what's happening? Jobs are being outsourced. People are losing their jobs. Inequality is rising. And people are shouting. They're saying loudly, they're saying, protect me, protect me, protect me. Protect my job, protect me from terrorists, protect me from immigrants, protect me from everyone and everything that's threatening my way of life. Now, these are valid concerns. But the ways that we're dealing with them are troubling. And that is the troubles that we're facing today. And ultimately, we need to ask ourselves, why are we creating these tensions between different people in our society? And how is this going to solve our problems? If we are to follow this anti-globalization narrative that focuses on isolationism, alienates individuals and minority groups, what will our world look like? Why are we doing this? And I think one of the key things that we need to take into account is that globalization, how much it's also given us negatives, is not going to disappear overnight, even if we would want it to. Our world has become so interconnected that there is no way to get rid of globalization. And simply, I also believe that we shouldn't, because the challenges that we are facing today are challenges that transcend national boundaries. They need global cooperation. Climate change, mass migration because of climate change, automation, robotization. How are we going to solve these problems if we don't have global cooperation? And I think global citizenship is something that can bring both together because it focuses on our narratives and it focuses on our individual communities and brings them part of this global narrative. Now, in 2013, when I was studying in Swaziland, I had the opportunity to see how local citizenship could bridge the divide between the local and the global. And what happened was, in 2013, I traveled to the annual Grahamstown Festival in South Africa. And this is where I met Stuart. Now, Stuart is a bus driver in Grahamstown who every single day he would drive special hopper buses. Basically, these buses, they would take festival goers who were visiting, take them around the city to different venues. And coincidentally, every single time I would meet Stuart as I was taking one of these buses. So here we are, we're sitting in the backseat of his car. And you'd expect someone who would be a bus driver and who's driving, the same circles every single day. It would be quite a numbing experience, right? Yet Stuart was the most cheerful and happy person I have ever met. We were used to sit in the back of his bus rides, singing along to Rick Ashley's Never Gonna Give You Up and Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On. I know he had actually recorded these songs, the little cassette tapes that he was playing. I know it might sound weird to you, but we actually had cassette tape. So at the end of the week, before we go home, Stuart invited me and Moritz, as you can see here on the picture, to his home. And before we knew it, I was sitting in the back seat of a red Suzuki-looking car, stuffed with Stuart's family, off to his home. And as we're sitting in the back of his car, he's driving, he's telling him about his life, he's telling him about our community programs, local projects that he's having in his community to bring people back to schools, to help them. And as we're driving outside of Grahamstown, it's getting darker outside. The houses are getting more densely packed. We're seeing small fires. People are congregating on the streets. And eventually we arrive at Stuart's house. Now, Stuart lives in a tiny bedroom apartment just outside of the luxurious inner city of Grahamstown. And as we got there, Stuart was showing us around this little house. And he was talking to us about globalization and climate change. And he actually brought us to this little kitchen where he had these tiny recycling bins. Now, to me, it almost seemed bizarre that we would be talking about global problems like this in such a humbling setting, right? Yet, at the end of Stuart's little tour, he came up to me and Moritz and he said, I am not a great man. We don't have much, but we have our family, we have enough to eat, and we are ready for this world. Now, at a 17, 18-year-old kiddo, it had such a paramount importance and effect on me because here I was standing in this man's living room who had so much more, who from a position of privilege, yet he had so much more in life than I. And I felt so vulnerable and humble in that moment. And I think what made me realize is that what made Stuart a true global citizen was firstly that he was able to be aware of his surroundings. He was able to connect with his local community. He was helping projects, setting up projects for children. He was supporting them. He realized that he was part of something. Secondly, he was taking an active effort to engage with others. There he was inviting two foreigners into his home who had barely met. And thirdly, what made Stuart a global citizen was that he was capable of connecting his world to a larger narrative, to a larger global world. And I think he really touched on one of the key problems that we're facing in our world today. Namely, we are being paralyzed by a human incapacity to see ourselves as part of a larger world. Yet we expect all the benefits that this interconnected and amazing world has given us to come naturally without any effort. We want the good, but fail to change the bad. And I believe that global citizenship consists out of individuals who are capable of connecting what's happening in their local surroundings and connecting them to a global world is what we need. We need citizens just like Stuart. Thank you.
All right, what are your thoughts on that? What do y'all think? I'm almost done. I know my time's almost done. Just want to make sure this is all getting absorbed in your minds.
I really liked him saying something like, we want the good, but we don't want to change the bad. Like, we don't feel like changing the bad.
That was big, wasn't it? Like, we all enjoy getting on the web. We all enjoy being able to experience different cultures. We all want to enjoy all the benefits that we reap from globalization, like having like he said, driving in a car that was made in Japan or Germany and eating global food. We all want the good, but then we don't see the problems that come along with it: climate change, migration issues, immigration issues. We don't see the conflict, and when we do hear about it, we just want to pretend like it doesn't exist, and we don't want to actually make that difference. And so thank you, Ken. I really love that. Yeah, that was a huge point. And another big point is that it goes back to what I was saying, is you can have big dreams about changing the world, but working into your community to plug that in and make a difference there. So if you care about bigger worldwide issues, you don't have to travel the world to solve them. You don't have to go to every country and have a TED Talk. You can start right there in your community and saying, here's how we plug into this greater world. Here's a problem we all face, but here's what we can do about it right here in Carter County, right here in Tennessee. So that's if you have bigger dreams and you're thinking, well, I don't want to just do small problem that we face right here. I want to do something big. You can do both. And in fact, it's crucial that you do. So I'm going to wrap it up with one more final slide here. If it will go. Oops. See, and I just skimmed right over it, didn't I? The last thing I just want to add really quick is just a warning, right? We need to put warning labels on things. Leadership fatigue is a real thing. And I want to say that if you're interested or you want to be a leader, you know you are a leader and you want to do this kind of work, I want to just give that brief warning label. You know, you watch all these commercials about prescription medications, and then right at the very end, they fast talk through kind of the warning labels and side effects and stuff. That's kind of what I'm going to do here, but not as fast. Leadership fatigue is a real thing that happens when you try to make such a big difference, but you put so much on your own shoulders, and you don't see your efforts paying off, and you burn out. A lot of amazing potential leaders or amazing leaders, a lot of people face that problems where they just want to change so much, they end up burning out and fizzling away, and then they think that they failed as a leader, when in fact they didn't fail. It was just something called leadership fatigue. So to avoid these kinds of problems, make sure that you're delegating the work. So as you start making those changes in your community, and people start joining your mission and start helping you, delegate that work. Let them help you. So does everybody understand what delegating work means? So like, I have this big task that I want to do. I'm going to say, hey, Claire, can you do this? Chloe, can you do this? Skylar, can you do this task for me? I'm going to break it up into different pieces here, small pieces. Many hands make light work. A big project can all of a sudden become a very small, simple one with everybody has their piece, their part to play, and we all work together to accomplish the common goal. So that's sharing the vision and recruiting the allies that goes into delegating the work. Those two can be wrapped together. Rest. There are different kinds of rest other than just sleeping. Resting your physical body is important, but rest mentally as well. Take breaks. Allow yourself days to not think about the problem for a moment and just enjoy nature. Rest mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And of course, that ties into self-care. I know y'all know what mindfulness is, because you can't have been with Jillian and not know what mindfulness is, right? So be sure you're filling yourself up. There's a common phrase saying, you can't pour into other people's cup if your cup is empty, right? So doing that mindfulness activities to calm yourself back down as well and pour love back into yourself as well. We often pour so much into our communities that we then drain ourselves and then we're incapable of continuing our work. So self-care. Anyways, that's what I got. I was going to put in this quote at the very end. But I figured, but I didn't. I figured this would be kind of a good place to end it and just ask if anybody has any questions. The one quote that I wanted that I was thinking of, and of course my brain, I can never remember the whole one, but hang on a second. Lorax. It's the Lorax quote. Y'all know that one, right? Do y'all know the Lorax from by Dr. Seuss? Unless someone like you who cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And when I think of community leadership and taking action, that's exactly what I imagine in my head. So thank you.